The following episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. The political storm clouds are brewing. Here's a Politico argument that Bernie campaign slams Warren as candidate of the elite. It's fairly accusatory, I'd say. Slams Warren as opposed to describes Warren or claims Warren or some other word like that. But slams, there. Boom. Bernie campaign slams Warren. Sanders volunteers are being told to zero in on the perceived weaknesses of Warren, but also Biden and Buttigieg. So what we have here, you could even say that Bernie campaign is being accused of telling the truth about Elizabeth Warren, which is, as you may have guessed, the angle I'd probably normally take on this story. Let's see, though. We've got some comments on Twitter. We can compare. Wouldn't want to lead you in the wrong direction. So keep an open mind, and I will too, and let's figure this out. Let's start with the article. Des Moines, Iowa. The non-aggression pact between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is seriously fraying. Sanders' campaign has begun stealthily, here's another loaded word, stealthily attacking Warren as a candidate of the upper crust who could not expand the Democratic base in a general election, according to talking points his campaign is using to sway voters and obtained by Politico. As we go forward here, I should just alert you that some of the ways that Politico obtain this information is open to scrutiny, subject to scrutiny, and has not withstood the test of scrutiny. Some accounts are that these scripts were put up on a board, up on a discussion board, and were then not approved by the Sanders campaign and were then deleted. But they don't say here in this article how they obtained these talking points. The script that they obtained instructs Sanders volunteers to tell voters leaning toward the Massachusetts senator that the people who supported her are highly educated, more affluent people who are going to show up and vote Democratic no matter what, and that she's bringing no new bases into the Democratic Party. Now, if we look at that statement, you may not want Sanders to say that in public, or you may not even want to know that he's telling his surrogates to say it, publicly or privately. But what you have to admit, it's the goddamn truth. It's true that her people who support her are highly educated, more affluent, who are going to show up and vote Democratic no matter who, no matter what. That's just coded language for the VBNMW crowd. And she's bringing no new bases into the Democratic Party. She's bringing the wine track candidates to that also support Pete Buttigieg to her side, but she's not bringing new voters in. She's just moving around these, what would Crystal Ball say, these wine track voters who don't know who they want. They keep going back and forth. They're fickle. So they keep wandering around trying to decide who their chosen candidate is, as opposed to the stickiness that's Megan Day of Jacobin Magazine's word, the stickiness of Sanders supporters. Now, let's go back to the script. I like Elizabeth Warren, optional. The script begins. In fact, she's my second choice, but here's my concern about her. It then pivots to the criticisms of Warren. It's just interesting that nobody is criticizing these criticisms for being untrue. It's sort of like when Bernie attacked Hillary and said, hey, you take money from Goldman Sachs to give speeches. That's bribery. you're taking bribes from Goldman Sachs. And nobody ever tried to say it wasn't true. They just said, hey, you're mean to say so. You're just being mean to say that Hillary is taking bribes from Goldman Sachs. This seems a lot milder by comparison. The Sanders campaign did not challenge the authenticity of the script. That's interesting. But it declined to comment. The Warren campaign also declined to comment. Well, I've got a clip of Elizabeth who is not declining to comment, so she may not have commented to Politico, but she definitely commented. It is unclear whether the script is being used for phone calls or door knocking or both, or in which locations. It's also unclear whether it's being used at all, but you didn't bother to say that. The document also instructs to tell voters who are favorable toward Pete Buttigieg that he lacks support among African Americans and young people, and to tell voters sympathetic to former Vice President Joe Biden that he doesn't really have any volunteers, and that no one is really excited about him. Gosh, all of the attacks relate to the electability of Sanders' top rivals. The campaign script signals a break from the predominantly positive tone Warren and Sanders have adopted throughout the campaign. While Sanders has been critical of other Democratic rivals, particularly Biden, he and Warren, longtime friends, have largely abstained from attacking one another despite regular prodding from reporters. And despite the fact that a lot of us know that Elizabeth was paid by the DNC to enter the contest simply to derail Bernie. Forget about Donald Trump. Anyway, but with voting now just weeks away, the competition between the two is intensifying. The marquee Iowa poll released Friday had Sanders in first at 20%, with Warren trailing narrowly behind in second place at 17%. We were told never to go negative or contrast with other candidates, a person close to Sanders' campaign told Politico. Who is this person the cat dragged in? Bernie would let us know when it was okay, so if it's happening, he's aware. That sounds like a bullshit statement if I ever heard one. At a campaign appearance Sunday, Warren responded that she was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. I've got a clip of that I'll play for you in a minute. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016, and we can't have a repeat of that, she said. That sounds a lot like what Hillary told Howard Stern when she says, oh, he hurt me, and I hope he doesn't do it again. I hope he knows enough to drop out before he does that kind of harm again. I hope Bernie reconsiders and turns his campaign in a different direction. The quasi-truce between the two has had moments of friction, but is largely held. Last summer, some Sanders aides tweeted criticisms of Warren's positions on Medicare for All, of her for not going on Fox News, and more. The Warren campaign did not respond publicly, but senior Warren advisor Dan Geldin privately communicated with Sanders' campaign manager Fez Shakir in an attempt to stop the tweets, according to an official familiar with the conversation. Good luck with that. The number of critical tweets did decline, but some Sanders aides, including policy advisor Warren Gunnels, have continued occasionally to jab at her. The Sanders script is a sign that the Sanders campaign is starting to go after all the candidates more aggressively, not just Warren. I hope so. Boy, I hope that's what's happening. When volunteers encounter voters leaning in favor of Biden, they're told to respond that there is no enthusiasm for the former vice president and that Trump would clobber him on his Iraq war vote, for instance. Bernie has said that publicly. And his support for free trade agreements. That's exactly what Trump did with Hillary, and it's part of why Hillary lost, according to the script. This is very interesting, I think, because if Bernie is doing this, and then Warren tells him to back down, to watch his tone the way Hillary did, I'm hoping that he'll double down. I hope he'll come at her even with more fury, assuming that he's even behind this. I found out about this following Yusuf Okay, this made me LOL. Some anonymous Bernie volunteer wrote in Slack that Warren largely appeals to white voters. She does. It gets out, and Warren implies Bernie personally told volunteers to trash her. Warren can't be this fragile and run for president, let alone against Trump. I'm starting to think it wasn't random. It's just too convenient at this point in the campaign when Warren is trending down. Maybe this is a ploy by Warren. Warren even refused to answer a reporter's question concerning if she would allow her family members to be on a board of a foreign country's energy company, and even took offense at the question. She's going to get more questions like that about Hunter Biden. Let's see what she actually said here that started the hullabaloo.
To the Democratic tent. Why is he wrong? This campaign and the way that they are talking about you at the doors here in Iowa, basically saying that your voters are people who will vote Democrat anyway, that you don't bring new bases into the Democratic tent. Why is he wrong?
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me.
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie Sanders is sending his volunteers out to trash me. You watch her. When she gets a question that she's not ready for, you get a totally different kind of body language than when you get a question that she's thought about and is prepared for. She's a lawyer. She's a professor of law. And on this answer right here, this is carefully reasoned. She didn't come before the judge here without thinking about it in advance. This is not off the cuff. Let's watch again from the beginning of her comment.
Why is he wrong?
I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me. He's known me for a long time. He knows who I am, where I come from, what I have worked on and fought for, and the coalition and grassroots movement we're trying to build. Democrats won in 2020. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016, and we can't have a repeat of that. Democrats need to unite our party, and that means pulling in all parts of the Democratic coalition.
Democrats need to unite our party. What she's really saying there is vote blue no matter who, which is what she was accused of saying. She's actually affirming the attacks that supposedly were made on her.
It means building a grassroots movement with face-to-face conversations with people who are not. It means getting a positive message out. That's how we lead Donald Trump. We cannot nominate someone who takes big chunks of the Democratic coalition for granted. We need someone who will bring our party.
She's really speaking against Bernie or bust there, who takes big tracts of the Democratic coalition for granted. There are a whole lot of Bernie or bust voters who will not vote for Elizabeth if she's the nominee. I think that's what she's alluding to there.
We need someone who will excite every part of the Democratic Party.
You're right about that. Someone who will excite every part of the Democratic Party, plus all the independents. Oh, you didn't mention the independents. What about them? Do we need to excite them too?
Someone that every Democrat can believe in. I hope Bernie reconsiders and turns his campaign in a different direction.
You say you need someone though who every Democrat can get behind. Is that not Bernie Sanders?
I believe we need someone every Democrat can get behind. I'm out there fighting for.
I believe it's me. I believe it's not Bernie Sanders. We can't have all the Democrats behind him because he's not even a Democrat. This is sounding so Hillary-esque. I can't believe it. The whiny tone of voice, and why is he picking on me? Oh, he hurt me. Oh, he hurt me. No, you hurt yourself. Everything he's saying about you is true. If you don't like it, then change it about yourself. Don't change him and tell him to watch his tone when he's merely, if he's even behind it. Whoever's behind it is telling the truth, and you don't like it. And no, you don't have the ability, as Bernie does, to unite all the Democrats. And the Democrats who don't like Bernie because he's a grubby populist and because he is not really a Democrat, they say that they're still going to vote for him if he receives the nomination. Even Barack Obama has said that when they pressed him about telling aides close to Obama, that that's code for something, when he told somebody that he was going to try to stop Bernie if Bernie got close to receiving the nomination. He would speak up to stop Bernie. At least he wouldn't send someone after him to effect a botched robbery. Just saying. All right, let's get some other opinions on this. Do not mourn for Elizabeth. She only came into the ring when the DNC told her she was allowed to. Ask Michael Kives. Followers of the Bernie or Bust show know what that's all about. He is a talent agency exec who has actually contributed to Elizabeth Warren, also Kamala and Corey, and the agency, Creative Artists Agency, also represents Joe Biden. So that's what that is about. Her point all along has been to block Bernie. Otherwise, she would have endorsed him both times. I think someone might have leaked this, so when she inevitably drops out, she won't endorse him. I never thought she was going to, but I also hope I'm wrong. I'm too jaded to be optimistic. That would bring, if anybody who was a Bernie Sanders supporter was going to vote for Elizabeth in the general election, that might have done it. You know, if she had endorsed him last time, they might think about it, that she actually is a progressive and wants progressivism to win, as opposed to being like Hillary, an incrementalist who formulates plans that can't possibly be enacted so that her donor billionaire people are happy with her. I don't think you're too jaded to be realistic. You may be too jaded to be optimistic. I think that she definitely will not. I think she's using this as an excuse when it comes to it later in a brokered convention. I think she'll use this as an excuse not to send her delegates over to Bernie. I don't know that she'll send them to Biden, but she may not send them anywhere, and she may pout. Oh, he hurt me. Yeah, I think you're on the right track there. And here's another one. The Humanist Report. This came out this morning. The other ones came out yesterday. She's using this as a ploy to go negative against Bernie while giving herself a convenient victim narrative to hide behind. She knows it's smart for her to go negative now, specifically against Bernie, and rather than contrasting differences, she's being disingenuous. Shameful. It is shameful because there is no denying that the accusations or the descriptions of her are accurate. It's accurate. So if you're going to deny it, that's one thing, but you can't, just like Hillary can't deny receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars per speech from Goldman Sachs. It's bribery in Hillary's case, and here it's true that Elizabeth won't be able, no more than Biden, to activate the new voters that they'll need to try to defeat Donald Trump. Especially if the economy doesn't change, then they're going to need all hands on deck. They're going to need independent voters. They're going to need new voters, young voters, black and brown voters, and every other color of voters. They're going to need purple voters, Barney the Dinosaur supporters. They're going to need everybody to defeat Trump. It's going to be a close election if the economy holds, no matter what. So We need to get over this shit. All right, now that brings me to a new article that I just wrote, Bernie or Bust or Bust. And this addresses some of what Elizabeth Warren is complaining about. One of the chief challenges faced by the Bernie or Bust movement is similar to the challenge faced by the modern monetary theory crowd. Even though the concept of Bernie or Bust seems simple on its face, the devil is in the details. Most people seem unable/unwilling to fully digest and understand all of the details. The Bernie or Bust movement has focused on leveraging the preferences of two main types of U.S. voters who, regardless of their party affiliation, might vote for a Democratic candidate in a presidential primary election and who are stubborn, desperate enough not to vote for a corporatist Democrat in presidential general elections. The first type of voter described below is a subset of the second type. So the first type is white, mostly voters in the Rust Belt, and these voters are admittedly somewhat racist, sexist, and typically not college educated, whose opinions matter because the electoral college system allows them to have more influence than coastal elitists want them to have. That's one category. Second category is disenfranchised working class voters of all races/classes who see both U.S. political parties as oligarchic/corrupt and prioritize economic justice for themselves and for others, and who are not afraid to use solidarity, say in the form of unions or protests, to achieve their goals. Both of these groups have a grubby populist flavor, and sadly, neither of these groups is as likely to vote in the primaries as they are to vote in the general election, which is one reason why electoral leverage, and even more importantly, getting the word out about that leverage, will be necessary in the foreseeable future for them to succeed in electing their preferred candidates. Because primary voters constitute roughly half the number of general election voters, and because their demographics are significantly different from general election voters, and I got this information from Ryan Grimm of The Intercept, the Bernie or Bust movement seeks to use the preferences of the aforementioned groups to bring awareness to those who typically vote in the primaries regarding the unpalatable truth, and we don't lie about it, it is truth, that they cannot simply choose the primary candidates they most favor if those candidates will not pass muster with the far larger group who will not support their candidates in the general election unless those candidates have a populist economic agenda. Not to mention a populist social agenda. One of the less attractive qualities of Democrats who vote in the primaries is that they tend to be, quote, liberals, of the type that Phil Oakes skewers in his song, Love Me, I'm a Liberal. Liberals of this ilk are selfish, but in a cloaked way, when it comes to both economic and social justice. This is what Phil says at the beginning of the song when he performed it live. An outspoken group on many subjects, 10 degrees to the left of center in good times, 10 degrees to the right of center if it affects them personally. These voters are willing to vote for candidates who support gay marriage, but simultaneously support segregated schools. Their preferred candidates typically are more elitist, I have a plan for that, I have a white paper for that, than populist. We need to develop and then insist on enforcing an economic social system that works for everyone. That's populist. They tend to favor candidates who are either born at the top of the socioeconomic ladder or who have climbed it based on merit and hard work. They favor candidates who are in possession of a good resume and good elitist references. They also favor candidates who will grease the wheels of government in ways that favor large publicly owned corporations because they want their pensions and other market-indexed holdings to rise in value. Because of this, the DNC party bosses, whose demographics and favored political candidates match this group, have developed a primary election system that makes it difficult for the types of candidates that the above-mentioned grubby populist working-class voters favor to receive the Democratic nomination, which is another reason going forward for why leverage will be necessary for those who wish to insist on electing populist candidates. For the purposes of the Bernie or Bust movement, we find it advantageous to lump together all constituencies of the multiracial working class bloc who probably/absolutely won't vote for a corporatist neoliberal candidate in the general election, no matter who, with intellectual leftists, but not sheepdogs. I linked to an article about sheepdogs there, who somewhat serve as spiritual leaders of this group, but who are vastly outnumbered by them. Then we make the case that the affluent/educated, mostly coastal elitists who typically choose the Democratic nominee, those who identify/signal with the true left culturally, but are more conservative fiscally, they must consider that they will not be allowed to choose a neoliberal corporatist Democratic nominee and expect that nominee to win in the general election. Unless and until the time comes when these two groups form their own separate political parties, they will need to come to some sort of understanding. The Democratic Party is at a crossroads. Democratic-leaning voters will either form a party of the people, or they will continue to have a party that has, over at least the last 70 years, served as the party of oligarchic cronyism. And liberals, quote, liberals, will need to face the fact that unless they unite with the grubby populists who will insist on electing true progressives at all levels of government, they will continue to lose. Postscript. Even though many Hillary supporters and other liberals favor the abolition of the Electoral College, the Democratic Party is much more likely to become a party of the people if the Electoral College remains. I don't know if we should tell them that. If the liberals, Phil Oakes-style liberals, succeed in this regard, it will be a blow against populism. So if you believe that Bernie's surrogates, wherever that script came from, if you believe that the assertions of that script are true and fair, and you believe that someone like Elizabeth Warren is not fit to be president because she is a stealthy, cloaked, neoliberal corporatist, then you should consider getting this word out about Bernie or Bust. And if you're a pundit, any kind of leftist or left-leaning pundit, it would behoove you, it would behoove the whole world if you could help get the message out that leverage is a thing. Leverage is a thing now that needs to be covered. You can either cover it from the perspective of a fellow elitist who needs to get the word out to your other elitist voters that the grubby populists aren't going to blink first, or you need to come at it from a true progressive perspective, is that neoliberalism has been killing us all, and we all need to work together to overcome it. I don't care which angle you take, but somebody has to cover this story, and so far it's been very difficult to get the job done. Dear viewers, you can help if you will. Dear listeners too, you can help if you will get these podcasts and YouTube videos and Medium articles out to the people you know via social media or in locker room water cooler conversations. In the meantime, keep on burning!
Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernie or Bust train.
The preceding episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.